3 true horror stories that happened by the roadside at dawn. 1. The abandoned train station at dawn. It was a cold dawn, the darkness thick as viscous ink, weighing heavily on the earth as if it wanted to swallow everything in existence. I was driving alone on a deserted road, the silence around me unsettling, broken only by the faint sound of my car's engine. My headlights cut a pale beam through the pitch black, like a fragile line of defense. In an endless abyss. The wilderness on either side of the road loomed ominously, shrouded in night. The dry grass shivered in the cold wind, rustling like whispers from hidden phantoms. In the distance, the mountain ranges appeared as silent behemoths, lying in wait and adding to the oppressive atmosphere of the quiet night. What was supposed to be a smooth journey turned into a misadventure due to a navigation error that led me to this scarcely traveled road. Up ahead, I spotted the faint outline of an abandoned train station. As the dilapidated structure came into view, my heart clenched, a sense of foreboding washing over me. The station was in ruins, its walls cloaked in mottled moss that glowed an eerie green under the dim moonlight, like scars left by time's cruel passage. The roof tiles were missing in patches, revealing dark beams that gaped like open mouths ready to devour any intruder. The ground around the station was littered with rubble and weeds that swayed in the wind, resembling a horde of ghostly figures. A few with a T-Rex stood forlornly beside the station, their twisted branches reaching out like bony arms pointing at the sky, as if lamenting the misfortunes that had befallen this place. I initially intended to drive past, but just then, my car emitted a strange noise and stalled. Damn it! Why now, of all times? I cursed, banging the steering wheel in frustration. My arm tingled from the force. Fear began to creep in as I shivered, pulling out my phone to call for help, only to find there was no signal. I was left hoping to find tools, or at least a place to wait for daylight in this forsaken station. I cautiously opened the car door. A gust of frigid wind rushed in like a blade, cutting across my face. I shivered and pulled my coat tighter, stepping out slowly. Each step crunched on the gravel beneath my feet, the sound eerily echoing in the stillness, as if the place was whispering secrets that made my nerves jangle. I kept my head on a swivel, moving quietly and slowly, fearful of disturbing something terrible. Pushing open the creaking, decaying door, it let out a shrill screech that reverberated through the empty station like a ghostly wail. I cautiously peered inside, confirming there was nothing unusual before squeezing through the door. A musty, decayed odor enveloped me, a mixture of dust, mildew, and the weight of time, making me gag. I wrinkled my nose, waving a hand in front of my face. The waiting area was empty, with only a few broken benches scattered about, covered in dust. Dim light filtered through shattered windows, casting irregular shadows on the floor where motes of dust danced like spirits in a macabre ballet. I walked slowly down one side of the hall, my eyes scanning the surroundings, my ears tuned to every faint sound. The walls were cracked, shadows lurking within, suggesting something might leap out at any moment. The ceiling lights were shattered, only dangling wires swayed in the breeze, creating a soft clink that sounded like death's tolling bell. Suddenly, I heard a faint sobbing, a woman's cry echoing in the desolate station, sending chills down my spine. I froze, my body stiffened as my heart raced, threatening to leap from my throat. I paused, straining to locate the source of the sound, which seemed to come from both left and right, fleeting and indistinct. Where's it coming from? Should I investigate? My fear battled with curiosity, but ultimately, I steeled myself, and moved toward the sound, for I had no other choice. Reaching a room that looked like a ticket booth, the door stood ajar. I hesitated, trembling as I placed my hand on the door, before pushing it open with a sudden force. The door creaked loudly, and I instinctively jumped back, hands clenched in a defensive stance. Inside was pitch black, and I fumbled for my phone, activating the flashlight and shakily illuminating the room. On the wall hung a faded map of the train station, the paper, yellowed and frayed, telling a tale of former glory long past. The table was cluttered with outdated tickets and scattered papers, which looked even more ancient in the beam of my flashlight, burdened with memories of a bygone era. In the corner, a figure was curled up. It was a woman in a white dress, her long hair covering her face. She continued to cry softly, her body shaking. I nervously asked, Who Who are you? Why are you here? She did not respond, her sobs growing louder. My mind raced, fear enveloping me like a tidal wave. My legs felt weak, and I instinctively stepped back, hitting the wall to stabilize myself. This isn't real. I must have stumbled into a nightmare. I thought desperately, my gaze fixed on the woman, afraid to look away. I cautiously approached her, each step feeling as though I was walking on cotton. Just as I was nearly close enough to reach her, she suddenly lifted her head. Her face was pale as a ghost, eyes hollow, muttering, Why won't you let me go? The sight sent my soul reeling, and I couldn't suppress a terrified scream, covering my face with my hands, and turning to flee. In my panic, I collided with the table, scattering its contents across the floor, but I didn't care, I just wanted to escape. As I burst from the room, I stumbled upon a tattered diary lying on the ground. I instinctively picked it up, and continued my frantic dash toward the exit. Flipping it open, I saw the words were smudged but still legible. The diary recounted a tragic tale. The woman had been a worker at the station, and many years ago, a horrific accident had occurred, claiming numerous lives. She, too, had perished in that disaster, her spirit wrapped here, doomed to relive her pain and despair every dawn. This is horrifying. Am I really encountering a ghost? My hand trembled as I clutched the diary, my steps faltering. I hadn't the chance to read further when a wild wind suddenly swept through the room, sending papers and tickets swirling like white phantoms. I fought to steady myself, gripping the door frame tightly, but the woman's form began to fade in the tempest, her cries growing ever more sorrowful, piercing my very soul. I need to get out of here, I need to escape. I screamed internally, releasing my grip, and sprinting toward the station's exit. As I burst into the corridor, I was met with an even more terrifying sight. Shadows seemed to writhe along the walls, figures struggling in anguish, their wails echoing in my ears. Those shadows seemed to be the souls of the victims from the station's disaster, trapped here forever. I staggered back in fright, flailing my arms as if to ward off these horrors. What is happening? Am I going to die here? I thought in despair, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. I raced toward the station doors, pushing them with all my might while shouting, Open up, please. But the doors felt as if something unseen held them shut. I began to ram my shoulder against the door, again and again, pain shooting through me, but I had no time to think about it. All I wanted was to escape. Desperate, I pounded on the door, calling for help, but only the overwhelming sounds of terror replied, Someone, anyone, help me. I felt trapped in a nightmare, my fear reaching its peak. Just as I was losing hope, I suddenly heard the roar of an engine, followed by bright headlights piercing the darkness. A passing truck driver had heard my cries and jumped out to help me open the door. I bolted from the abandoned station, almost tumbling out, and looked back at the station standing ominously in the dark, its eerie presence still lingering. I climbed into the truck and sped away from that dreadful place, but the memories of that dawn would be etched in my mind forever. For a long time after, whenever I recalled that scene, an uncontrollable fear would rise within me. Under the streetlight at midnight. It was a muggy summer night, and at midnight, the entire city seemed shrouded in a heavy, oppressive darkness, making it hard to breathe. The sky was overcast, thick clouds rolling like dense ink, and occasionally, flashes of lightning slithered through the clouds like silver serpents, tearing the night sky apart. This was followed by a deep, rumbling thunder that echoed through the air, as if the heavens were growling in anger, releasing pent-up frustration. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual hustle and bustle long gone, leaving behind a profound silence. Only the streetlights, spaced apart at intervals, emitted a dim yellow light, their glow appearing especially faint against the gloomy backdrop, as if struggling against the weight of the encroaching darkness. Beneath the streetlight, a few moths flitted around, their shadows blending into the light, resembling lost souls aimlessly searching for a home in this endless night, drawn inexplicably to that flickering glimmer, only to be cruelly repelled time and again. I was walking home alone after a late night with friends. Though my body felt heavy with exhaustion, I found comfort in the thought of soon being home, cozy in bed. I hummed a little tune, my footsteps light against the stillness of the street, the sound echoing in the empty alley, like a heartbeat in the dead of night. As I reached an intersection, I noticed a little girl standing under a streetlight. She wore a bright red dress that stood out vividly in the dim light, yet there was something unsettling about it. Her hair was styled in 2 ponytails, and she stood silently with her back to me, motionless like a lifeless statue. At first, I didn't pay much attention, thinking, why is this child out so late? Where are her parents? I continued on my way. As I passed her, I instinctively glanced over. That single glance sent a chill down my spine, a wave of inexplicable fear flooding my mind. The girl's face was as white as paper, devoid of color, her eyes fixed blankly ahead, devoid of life, as if she were staring straight through me, into the endless darkness behind. It felt as though she was gazing into something only she could see. I slowed my pace, a sense of dread welling up within me, tightening my heart like an invisible grip, quickening my pulse. I tried to rationalize it, thinking she must just be tired or unwell. Gathering my composure, I asked softly, "Little one, why aren't you home at this hour?" She didn't respond, remaining as still as before, a silent statue unresponsive to my inquiry. I took a few steps forward but felt an unsettling sensation of being watched, as if a pair of eyes were fixated on my back. It made my skin crawl, as though a cold snake were slithering down my spine, sending goosebumps rippling across my body. Unable to resist, I turned back to look, only to find the girl had turned to face me. Her expression was unchanged, but her empty gaze seemed to pierce my soul, sending a shiver through me. "Ah!" I gasped, nearly screaming, my body trembling involuntarily. My eyes widened in fear as I stared at her, my hands clenching into fists as if that would somehow offer me protection. My mind went blank, terror washing over me like a tidal wave. I thought frantically, what is she? A person or a ghost? Why is this happening? I quickened my pace, almost breaking into a run, desperate to escape the nightmare. I glanced back intermittently, and there she was, still expressionless, following me with light, almost inaudible footsteps. Yet, I could feel her presence, like a silent ghost glued to my back, and no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't shake her off. Why is she following me? What does she want? Panic set in, my heart racing like a frightened rabbit. I scanned my surroundings, hoping to see someone else or a place to hide. Just then, I spotted a convenience store up ahead, its bright lights stark against the dark street, like a beacon of hope in the shadows. Without hesitation, I sprinted toward it. I ran as fast as I could, my arms pumping by my sides, each stride feeling like a leap from a predator. I gasped for air, my heart pounding as if it might burst. Almost there, just a bit further to safety, I kept repeating in my mind, urging myself to reach the store. When I burst through the convenience store door, I stumbled inside, quickly turning to peek outside. Panting, I looked back. The girl hadn't followed me in. She stood under the streetlight, watching me from a distance. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking perhaps I had just been too anxious, imagining things. Phew, that scared me. Maybe I really was overthinking, I said, patting my chest to calm myself. I bought a bottle of water, sat down to catch my breath, and chatted with the cashier. My anxiety gradually fled. After checking the time, I felt it was about time to head home, so I got up to leave. As I stepped out of the store, and glanced back at the streetlight, the girl was gone. Assuming she had finally gone home, I felt relieved and continued on my way. However, not far along, I heard the faint sound of footsteps again. Terrified, I turned around to see the girl had reappeared, still expressionless, slowly walking towards me. "Ah!" I screamed and ran, shouting for help. My arms flailed as I sprinted, legs pushing against the pavement, breath coming in gasps, tears welling in my eyes. Despair flooded my mind, racing thoughts of, why is she back? What is she? What do I do? Why isn't anyone coming to help? I felt my strength waning, but the girl continued to follow me, unhurried, as if she relished the chase, knowing I could never escape. "I don't want to die. Please let me go," I cried desperately in my mind, running while glancing back, her pale face appearing more ominous under the dim streetlight. Each time I turned, her hollow eyes seemed to devour my very soul. Just as I felt I might be lost to despair, I saw a police station ahead. The bright bar DGE glimmered in the light, offering a flicker of hope. Summoning every last bit of energy, I sprinted toward it, teeth clenched, fists balled, desperate to reach my salvation in this dark, terrifying world. When I burst into the police station, I collapsed on the floor, trembling and gasping for air. Glancing back, the girl had vanished. The officers, noticing my panic, hurried over to ask what happened. I recounted the entire ordeal. Initially skeptical, they reassured me I might just be tired and hallucinating. They sent someone to investigate, but nothing unusual was found. After resting for a while, I waited until dawn before finally heading home. From that night on, every time I passed under that streetlight, memories of that terrifying midnight and the expressionless girl would flood back, a chill creeping over me as the fear etched itself deep in my soul, leaving me trembling every time I walked by. Days turned into weeks, and I thought that strange encounter was just a one-time fatigue-induced hallucination. But, unexpectedly, the eerie experience wasn't done with me. One night, again under the suffocating summer heat, I was returning home late after work and walked past that same streetlight. As I approached the intersection, I unconsciously glanced at the light, a surge of inexplicable tension gripping me. The area was empty, and nothing seemed amiss, so I sighed in relief, thinking perhaps last time I had just been spooked. Hurrying to get past, I suddenly felt the air around me grow cold, a stark contrast to the sticky summer night. A shiver ran down my spine, an ominous premonition rising within me. I couldn't help but look back, and there she was again, standing under the streetlight, still in that red dress, her two ponytails framing her face as she stood expressionless, as if she had never left. My heart sank, terror washing over me, more intense than before. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs felt like they were glued to the ground. I stared in horror, stammering, how can it be you again? The girl slowly raised her hand, her thin, pale finger pointing directly at me. Her lips moved slightly, seemingly speaking, but I could hear nothing, only the shape of her mouth forming the words, "Come with me." I shook my head vigorously, desperate to refuse, but my body moved against my will, stepping towards her. I shouted inside my mind, "No. I don't want to go. What is happening?" Yet my feet carried me closer. As I reached her side, she abruptly turned, and walked towards a nearby alley. I hesitated, uncertain whether to follow, but an invisible force pulled me along, and I found myself trailing behind her. The alley was dark, devoid of streetlights, with only a faint glow from afar. I cautiously followed, fear and confusion swirling within me. Where's she taking me? What does she want? We walked through the alley until we arrived at an abandoned house. The walls were mottled and overgrown with moss, and the roof was missing shingles, with parts collapsed, exposing dark interiors. The door was tightly shut, paint peeling away to reveal rotten wood beneath. The girl approached the door and stopped, raising her hand to knock. My heart raced, dread gripping me tightly as I begged her not to. She glanced back, her hollow gaze locking onto mine, and without a word, opened the door and stepped inside. In that moment, clarity struck. I remembered the stories, the warnings about what happened to those who followed shadows, those who ventured into darkness without heed. It was said those who entered abandoned places often didn't return, lost forever in the folds of forgotten time. No. Don't. I shouted, but my voice was drowned by the night's silence. With a heavy heart, I watched her vanish inside, and the door creaked shut behind her, echoing like a death knell. With a rush of adrenaline, I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the main road, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the image of the girl and the empty house from my mind. The weight of the night pressed heavily upon me, and I knew I would never walk those streets again without remembering the darkness that lingered beneath the streetlight at midnight. 3. The Suburban Road at dawn. It was a deep autumn dawn, and the entire world seemed shrouded in a thick layer of darkness. heavy and
struggled against
suffocating.
the invisible
The sky
force,
was overcast
flailing
with
with a
dark
wrench
clouds,
in a desperate
like massive red grey stones
My
piled
body was
together,
pulled in all
completely
directions,
obscuring the
my
moon and
footing
stars,
faltering
as
as
I
I
fought
fought
with
with
every
every
ounce of strength.
EP
The pressure
flew.
only
The wind howled
intensified,
across the
leaving me
wilderness,
feeling
helpless
helpless
and
and
close
close
to
to
autumn.
rustling.
I
The trees
don't
on
want
either
to die,
side of the road.
please.
That
Let
sound
me go.
was like invisible
I
ghosts
cried out
softly
internally,
wailing,
or
tears
perhaps
streaming
a
down my
symphony
face
composed by
uncontrollably.
nature.
I
adding
felt
an eerie
trapped
atmosphere
on the
to
brink
the
of being
desolate
consumed by an endless
countryside.
void,
The trees
with no
flanking
escape
the
in
road were
sight.
tall and
In that
sparse,
moment of despair,
swaying wildly
I
in the
suddenly
wrath of the
saw a
wind,
flash of
as if
lightning
dried
cut through the sky,
skeletal arms
followed
were
by a
flailing
rumble
in the
of
dark,
thunder.
desperately
In that
trying
instant,
to grasp
the
something
pulse
but
pulled
always
vanished,
in vain,
and those
the
figures
leaves had
seemed
long turned
startled,
yellow,
retreating
and
hurriedly to
blown
their
by the
car and
autumn
speeding
breeze.
away.
I
I collapsed
collapsed
to the
fluttering
ground
down,
like dying
gasping for
butterflies,
breath,
feeling
swirling
as though
through
I
the air
had just
before
escaped
softly
from the
landing
gates
on the
of
road,
hell,
carpeting it
from the
with a
struggle
thick layer of yellow.
SW.
Occasionally,
Soaking my
a few
clothes,
leaves would be
chilling
caught
me
by
to
the
the
wind,
bone, and
I lay there in
against
the
the
dirt,
car window,
too stunned
only
to
to
move,
be whisked away
overwhelmed
again
by what had
just
just
transpired.
transpired.
Mischievous
When I
ghosts
finally
were trying
gathered
to
the
peek
strength
into
to
the
stand
world
up,
inside
I
the car
turned to
in
look
the
at the
distance.
path ahead.
The
The
mountains
night was
loomed
still
in the
dark,
dark,
but
the
their
shadows
outlines
seemed
blurred,
blurred,
like a group of silent
evening,
giants
and I
lying in
realized
wait,
the danger had
silently
passed.
observing
The
the
figures
desolate
had vanished,
countryside, leaving
creating
only
an
the distant
oppressive
sound of the wind
atmosphere.
and my own
Occasionally,
heartbeat. Thank goodness,
the piercing
it's
cry
over.
of a night bird,
I muttered,
would slide
shaking
through
as
the
I
silence,
climbed back
its
into
sound
my car.
echoing in
My
the
heart
stillness
was still
like a
racing.
wail from the depths
The
of
wrench
hell,
slipped from my
sending
fingers,
shivers down my
landing
spine.
on the floor.
I had
I
received
quickly
the urgent
turned the
task
ignition
from my
key,
company,
praying the engine
engine
would
to deliver
start.
an important
As the
document
engine
to a
roared to
factory.
life,
A flood
the
of relief
countryside
washed over me.
I hurriedly
I
set
could
off in my car, and
T
along the way,
believe I had
I saw
survived the
hardly
ordeal.
any other vehicles.
I gripped the
The
steering
warmth
wheel
of the car,
tightly,
telling
as heaters
myself
did
I
little
needed
to
to
fend
leave
off
this
the haunted
haunted
place
place
through the
behind.
windows.
The night
I
was still
instinctively
dark,
tightened
but
my
I
coat.
could finally
My
see
eyes
a
glued
path
to the
out
road
of this
ahead,
nightmare.
focused
As I
solely on
drove away,
completing the
I
task
looked
in
in
the
the
rearview
rearview
mirror,
mirror, the warmth of my
half
home
expecting
as I drove
to
along
see
a
those
particularly
eerie
remote
figures
stretch of
pursuing me.
road.
My
But the road
car
remained
utterly
empty, the
experienced
shadows
a minor
behind me
malfunction,
slowly fading
with
away.
warning lights
I told
flashing on the
myself I would
dashboard.
never return to this
Reluctantly,
cursed
I
place.
pulled over to the
that I had
roadside
escaped this
and turned on
horrifying
my
ordeal.
hazard lights.
But deep
The
down,
blinking
I
lights
clung,
seemed glaringly bright in the
feeling
oppressive
that
darkness,
something dark still lingered in
intensifying
the
my
shadows,
sense of
waiting
isolation
for
and
another
helplessness.
chance to strike. Just my luck, breaking down in a place like this. I can't let this delay me. I grumbled to myself, frowning, feeling a surge of annoyance and anxiety. I opened the car door, and a gust of biting cold wind rushed in, sharp as a blade, cutting across my face. I shivered involuntarily, instinctively drawing my neck in, wrapping my coat tighter around me, and slowly stepped out of the car. As soon as I exited, I turned on my flashlight, and walked to the front of the car to assess the situation. The wind howled in my ears, whipping my hair and clothes into a frenzy. I squinted against the wind and bent down, to examine the engine compartment, continuously murmuring, "Please let it be a minor issue, I just need to fix it, and get going." Just then, I heard a strange sound, like someone softly chanting, or a beast growling, reverberating eerily on the desolate roadside, sending chills down my spine. It seemed to come from the depths of darkness, ethereal and sinister, and against the backdrop of the howling wind and rustling leaves, it stood out alarmingly. My heart raced, and fear began to creep in. I anxiously scanned my surroundings, but apart from the pitch-black trees and the empty road, I saw nothing. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or sounds from afar, and continued to inspect the car, but my hands began to tremble slightly, my movements growing frantic. It should be fine, I am probably just scaring myself, I thought, attempting to calm down, but my eyes couldn't help darting toward the dark corners, feeling as though something unseen was watching me. However, the sound did not dissipate. Instead, it grew clearer and closer. What's going on? Why is the sound getting nearer? Is something truly terrifying approaching? I felt a wave of panic rise in me, hastening my inspection. Please, just let me fix this. I don't want to linger here a second longer. Suddenly, I spotted a shadow darting out from the woods, ding straight for my car. I gasped and quickly hid behind the vehicle, frantically shining my flashlight at the shadow. My heart raced as if it might leap from my throat, my legs turning weak with fear, struggling to stay upright, relying on the car for support. With the flashlight beam, I discerned it was a disheveled figure, clothed in rags, with long hair that resembled dry grass, a dirty face, and eyes glinting with an eerie light in the darkness. He was chanting incomprehensible words as he approached,
the sounds mumbled yet dripping with a sinister undertone. Who are you? Stay back, I shouted, but he paid no heed, continuing his advance. Panic surged within me, and I felt utterly helpless. I curled up behind the car, clutching my knees tightly, shaking with terror, my gaze fixed on the figure rushing toward me, my mind swirling with fear and confusion. Is he insane or something worse? Will he harm me? At that moment, I noticed a wrench on the back seat. I quickly grabbed it, gripping it tightly, ready to defend myself. My palms were sweaty with anxiety, and the wrench felt slick in my hands, but I clung to it as if it were my only lifeline. When the figure reached my car, he suddenly stopped, bending down to peer through the window. I crouched behind the car, nervously watching his every move, my heart racing. Cautiously, I poked my head out from behind the car, straining to see what he was doing. My body trembled with fear, each movement deliberate, terrified that even a whisper might draw his attention. What is he looking at? What does he want? I wondered, my mind racing. I felt like a prey trapped in a snare, and he was the hunter poised to strike at any moment, a feeling of despair washing over me. After a moment, he straightened up and began circling my car, mumbling those strange words again. As he turned his back to me, I cautiously rose from my crouched position, still clutching the wrench tightly, my body slightly leaning forward, prepared to react at any moment. I slowly peeked around the car, hoping to make a break for it. But just as I leaned out, he abruptly turned around, locking eyes with me. His gaze was filled with madness and strangeness, as if it could pierce my soul, plunging me into a nightmarish reality. I recoiled, clutching the wrench even tighter, shrinking back against the car. What is happening? Is he really insane? Despair flooded my mind, leaving me blank, consumed by fear and a primal urge to escape. Just then, I heard the sound of a car engine approaching from the distance. My heart leapt with joy, thinking help had arrived. Thank goodness, finally someone is coming to rescue me, I thought excitedly, raising my flashlight high and waving it vigorously, hoping to attract their attention. A glimmer of hope flickered across my face as I trembled with anticipation, believing I could finally escape this horrifying predicament. As the car drew closer, I realized the occupants were also ragged figures, their pale faces and eerie eyes sending a wave of dread crashing over me. What is this? Why do they all look so strange? My heart sank again, engulfed in deeper fear and confusion. The hope I had felt moments ago was extinguished, replaced by even more terror and uncertainty. I stood there dazed, my flashlight hanging limply at my side, wondering, have I just traded one nightmare for another? The strange figures parked beside my car, stepping out to approach me, and the man circling my vehicle, still chanting incomprehensible words. I sensed danger brewing and gripped the wrench, ready to fight back. I positioned myself defensively, my eyes locked onto them. But before I could react, they halted, standing in unison, their hands raised, chanting, "Go back, go back." What does this mean? Where are they asking me to go back to? I was completely baffled by their sudden action, unsure of their intentions. Suddenly, I felt a powerful force tugging at me, as if something was trying to drag me into the woods.